We're about to embark on an adventure where no one has ever gone before. Where no one has even attempted to do what I'm about to do. Where no idiot would even think about doing what I'm about to do. We are going to make a Forge carbon triple tree.
A what?
Yeah, you heard me right. We are going to be carbon forging a set of triple trees, and we're gonna see if it's a viable option to put on a motorcycle. We're gonna break it and see what the strength level is compared to aluminum triple trees. My name is David, and welcome to Z's Garage. A couple months ago, I bought a 3D printer, and one of the ideas that I had was, can you 3D print a set of triple trees? And right now, after doing a ton of research, there really is no material that you can 3D print unless you have like a metal 3D printer. And you're starting to get into that point where you may just CNC some triple trees, probably be cheaper, or I don't know, just maybe more viable. So then it got me this idea of, can I carbon forge a set of triple trees? I'd create the mold in my 3D printer and then use carbon and epoxy to make this. But before we get into any sort of carbon forging, we have to create a mold. And in order to create mold, you have to have a triple tree to create that mold around. Now, I have very basic knowledge of AutoFusion 360, and I came up with this. This is my triple tree. We are going to be using a set of 2007 R1 forks for our build. And the forks are black, they look really great. It's also going to perform really, really well. And I took the triple tree from the R1 forks and I measured everything, measured from fork tube to see the right measurements that I need. And then I did a 35mm offset for the forks to the stem. These little inserts inside the middle of the triple tree are really just for design aspect, nothing really special. Just wanted to give it a little bit of flair. But before we go ahead and create the mold, let's 3D print this and just make sure that it fits on the forks. So let's do that. Really happy with how this turned out. I designed a bottom triple tree just quickly, pretty much almost exact same as the top triple tree. A couple little design aspects, made it a little bit different, but overall pretty much the same thing. Now I had to do a bottom triple tree because the fork actually tapers as it goes down, so it gets wider. So the bottom triple tree, a little bit wider, and then it shifted a little bit more, off center compared to the top triple tree. We're also using the Cognitomoto stem. Shout out to Cognitomoto. They're truly a gem of a company. They allow a lot of, your older motorcycles, they make parts for them. They're truly amazing. So this stem will allow us to convert the CB750 to these forks without, having to do crazy modifications. Next up, we're going to make a mold for this top triple tree. Once we make that mold, we'll wax it and then we'll start carbon forging. So let's make a mold and 3D print it. Okay, all my parts are printed out for my mold. Everything fits together really nicely. I'm gonna have to clean this up because there is a little gap. Can't really tell on the camera, but there is a little gap right here. But all my pieces turned out really, oh, thought it dropped. All these pieces turned out really great. I just have to clean it up a little bit, maybe cut around some of these edges just to, they clamp together really nicely, and let's start carbon forging. Okay, we are ready for carbon forging. My mold is all put together, it is waxed, it's ready to go. Next, we need to figure out how much carbon we're actually going to use. In order to do that, you have to go into the program that you use and figure out the volume of that product that you're making. For me, it's the triple tree. So we'll go into AutoFusion 360, and there's a certain calculation that you can do to figure out the volume of carbon that you're gonna need. And if you go into the details of my video or all the comments or whatever it is, there is a link on how to figure out the volume of carbon that you need. So go into that. For me, I need about 330 grams of carbon. And then I'm also going to be replacing about 30% of that carbon with these carbon strands. These carbon strands are going to bolster this triple tree significantly. So instead of all these chopped random carbon pieces, we're going to run these strands as well. Then for the epoxy, we are going to have about 25% more epoxy than of carbon. So 330 grams of carbon, then I need to add 25% for the epoxy. It's pretty simple. So let's do this. All right, so at this point, I'm starting to dab all the epoxy in the carbon, and right around here is when I realize that something is really, really wrong. Those tabs are actually 3D printed within the mold. They are not separate, and they should not be shaking at all. Then I start seeing smoke, and I am in full-on freak-out mode with how bad this is turning out. This should not be moving one bit at all, and I'm starting to feel how hot it is. It's starting to get hard, and the epoxy I just pour it all in, trying to save it, even though in the back of my head I knew this was probably done. Start shoving some carbon in there, dabbing as much as I can, and moving as fast as possible. At this point, I really realized that this probably was gone, but you know what? We're gonna keep going. So I throw the plunger on, and I'm having a very difficult time with getting the plunger on because of how tight the plunger was, and then also how loose those tabs were. Those tabs were, you know, pretty much flexing, and I just ended up ripping them out. Then I just threw the plunger in there, and without the screws holding it, and I try seating it, and I give it a good couple cracks, couple hits. It starts seating a little bit, but at this point it was long gone. this was a total disaster. I mean, it didn't even seat properly. It just was bad. So at this point right here, just take a couple cracks at it, break it, maybe shed a tear. This was bad. Well, that was really disastrous and a complete failure. So what happened? Well, I'm using a kit from Easy Composites. And with carbon forging, you're basically taking chopped carbon, you're taking epoxy, you're combining those two things, and you're compressing it, creating a really, really tight bond. The more compression you have, the tighter the bond is gonna be, and the better product you're gonna have. So the kit that I got, which is completely on me, has a handling time for the epoxy, because all epoxies have handling times, of only 12 to 19 minutes. With this big of a item, the triple tree, I needed honestly probably like an hour to hour and a half of handling time before it started, you know, kind of bonding. So it bonded way too fast or hardened way too fast. The handling time was too quick and it just was a complete failure. So let's crack open the mold. Let's see what it looks like and let's go from there. Well, one side honestly looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. But then when you turn it over, boom, this looks terrible. It looks so bad. Obviously, there was no compression at all. This should be about half the size of what it is right now. With carbon forging, compression is super important, like I said. And this, all that carbon is all really spread out in this triple tree. Creating not a really good tight bond. So this should be about half the size. Obviously, it is just not what we needed. So it's a total and complete failure. So after that complete and utter failure with my triple tree, or at least the first attempt, I went back inside my house, got on my computer, and I ordered this. This is the slow hardener. This allows for a handling time of 60 minutes to an hour and a half. So we have to reprint the mold and we're gonna give this another go. So hopefully this will allow me for a lot more time with this carbon forging. So let's get into it. Well, luckily, second time was the charm. This thing turned out perfect. The epoxy handling time was the key to all this. I had plenty of time to get my carbon in there, get my carbon strands, mix all the epoxy in there and do all my dabbing, make sure that everything is wet. And then the compression turned out perfect. I just slowly compressed it, make sure all that epoxy seeped out, and I turned out with an amazing product. Next up is I need to figure out how strong this triple tree is, because my concern is these inserts, these design inserts, that is probably going to be the weak point. We're going to go ahead and break this triple tree. We're going to break it right down the middle. We're going to break the end, and then we're going to break between the stem and the fork tube right in the middle of that. So we're going to Clark's Auto and Marine in Burlingame, and they have a hydraulic press where they are allowing me to use it to break this triple tree and see the strength of it. So let's go there and let's see how strong this is. Yeah, I mean, I can always adjust it. It's not a big deal. That's recording, that's recording. Do you want to put the piece of sheet metal in?
Nah, I got this in the way.
Yeah?
I think that'll be okay. All right. It's breaking already.
Yeah.
You want me to break it?
Yep. That didn't take very much force.
No, it didn't.
It's broken.
It broke very, very nicely.
Very easily.
Yeah, it sure did. As a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Pressure there. So about, we almost hit 1,000. And that's 1,000 foot-pounds of pressure.
It's 1 ton.
1 ton?
Yeah, this it's a 40 ton. So yeah, that if it went up to 1, that's a ton.
Oh.
Broke right here, and then it broke here to
Yeah.
the weak spot, and then to the other.
Yeah,
weak spot.
exactly. I mean, it's not like right in that strong spot.
Yeah.
Alright, so we're ready. There it goes.
What did that get up to?
Almost 2,000.
Okay.
All right, before we get into the numbers, because apparently I don't know how to read a gauge, I just want to ask you guys a favor. If you guys could hit that subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. Like I said, I don't know how to read a gauge apparently, so I wanted to give you guys accurate numbers on the breaking point for this triple tree. Now, the first breaking point was right down the middle. Right down the middle, we broke it at about 1 to 2 tons, which was a little surprising. I definitely thought this was going to be a very strong point. Now, I will say, maybe my design aspect of this triple tree exactly wasn't great with these little inserts right over there, because the crack went right into the insert and then right on top right there and was pretty weak. Next up, we broke the part that goes around the fork tube. This broke at 3 to 4 tons. And that also was very surprising because my bar for my expectation went way low after seeing the middle. So pretty decent numbers on the fork. But the star of the show was between the fork tube and the stem. That was at 7 to 8 tons breaking point, which blew my mind. Now, is this a viable option to put on a motorcycle? I mean, maybe with a different design or better, I don't know, quality from me on how much carbon and how much epoxy and just kind of playing around with different ratios. But right now, I don't think it's a viable option. I mean, maybe run more strands, maybe whole sheets through it or something. I don't know. But right now, not viable, not safe. So we are going to get these CNC'd and put them on the motorcycle. Overall, really happy with these numbers, and honestly, it was a really fun experiment. And it's not the end of this. I'm definitely going to be trying something in the future, just not right now. Anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Next question that I have for you is, what are we doing next on the bike? Are we doing the electronic tray? Are we working on some fairings? Are we going to work on a hump in the back? I don't know. I wanted to ask you guys that question. I even have some ideas for maybe a brake light design with 3D printing and all that kind of stuff. So let me know what you guys want to see on this motorcycle in the comments, and I greatly appreciate all of you guys. All right, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.